Good evening. London's mayor has arrived in New York. Sadiq Khan is stateside to launch a multi-million-pound post-pandemic advertising campaign to try to convince Americans to take holidays in the capital. It's a 5-day tour covering everything from tourism to tech investment and drug policy. Today, New York's mayor called ours the rock star of all mayors, as it looked like he was successfully selling his mantra, London is open. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is in the Big Apple alongside him. Hello, Simon.
Duncan, before coronavirus, London was the third most visited city on the planet after Bangkok and Paris. In 2019, more than 3 million Americans crossed the Atlantic to see London. But COVID has changed everything. It's estimated by City Hall that 1 in 5 jobs in London rely on tourism, which is why the mayor is here in New York to launch the capital's biggest ever promotional campaign. London's £10 million bid to revive international tourism kicked off with a history lesson. Members of the cast of Six, the Tony-nominated West End musical based on the lives of Henry VIII's wives, performed a number in the middle of Times Square.
We loved it. We loved Six. We were very excited to be here.
It was amazing. I came here just for this. I kind of skipped work, so.
I want to see the Queen, Queen Elizabeth.
The Coldstream Guardsmen looked a little out of place, but they were here to reinforce a message.
This year, London's really special, particularly for American tourists, because London's one of the most open and accessible big cities in the world. To come to London, you don't need to take a test anymore, you don't have to fill in any forms.
Not unreasonably, people are anxious, and so we've got to, based on the evidence and our experience, explain to them it is safe and London is open.
The mayor will also talk to business leaders and politicians during the trip. First up today was a visit to New York City Hall and a meeting with Mayor Eric Adams, who didn't hide his admiration.
Every week there's a new mayor here, but there was a bit of energy with you coming in here. As among the mayors, you like the rock star of mayors, You know, people were excited. My team was excited to see you.
But Mayor Adams acknowledged there was rivalry.
We're going to have a nice, friendly competition. I'm going to get more Londoners to New York than you would get New Yorkers to London, you know?
Sadiq Khan also met a former New York mayor, the billionaire businessman Michael Bloomberg.
I'm trying to help your local economy.
It began with a somewhat staged encounter buying coffee in a Manhattan diner, followed by a private dinner. Later in the week, the mayor will head to Los Angeles to see how that city has legalised cannabis.
So Los Angeles is famous for a number of things, not just Hollywood, but also a few years ago they made the decision to decriminalise cannabis. I'm keen to see how it's working in Los Angeles. The mayor of Los Angeles, the governor of California have done some really progressive things in Los Angeles. I think it's important to have an open mind in these things and to see how it's working.
But today was about trying to make London look visible in a city which does attention-seeking on steroids.
We're Six.
Well, Simon, while the mayor enjoys himself there in New York, a difficult day back here for the Labour leader.
Yes, the mayor and his close advisers have been following very closely what's been happening in London, where Sir Keir Starmer has been under pressure all day to clarify his position. He's still awaiting, of course, the outcome of an investigation by Durham police, and he still maintains that he didn't break any rules. But he has made it clear this afternoon that if he is found guilty of breaking rules at that beer and curry party, then he will stand down as leader of the Labour Party.
I'm absolutely clear that no laws were broken. They were followed at all times. I simply had something to eat while working late in the evening, as any politician would do days before an election. But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down.
Simon, what does Sadiq Khan have to say about it?
Well, Sadiq Khan says he's known Keir Starmer for 25 years, regards him as a friend and believes the position he's taking is honourable. But as a lawyer, he pointed out that at this stage the allegations against Sir Keir are only allegations. And he tried to suggest that, unlike Downing Street, this was only a single event, the beer and curry night, that Downing Street was a different matter altogether because, as Sadiq Khan put it, Boris Johnson presided over a culture of rule breaking. I have no doubt that the Mayor will continue to follow closely what is happening to Sir Keir Starmer as he embarks on the last part of his trip to California. He flies from New York to San Francisco in a couple of hours' time.
Simon Harris in New York, thank you. Good evening. The Mayor is keen to sell the best of British on his tour of the US. He is once again talking about hosting another Olympic Games, telling Americans he wants London to become the sporting capital of the world. But is it an attempt to trade on the nostalgia of 2012 or a realistic idea for the future? His Conservative rival today dismissed the plans as an expensive attempt to distract from the capital's problems. We'll ask Sadiq Khan in a few minutes, but first our political correspondent Simon Harris on the latest from the Mayor's US tour.
10 years on, it's the stuff of nostalgia. But could the glorious summer of 2012 make a comeback in the not-too-distant future? Is London a serious runner in the race to host another Olympic Games? Sadiq Khan's just been in New York, where he announced the return to London of Major League Baseball, and now he's eyeing up the Olympics.
We've got facilities in London, so the cost won't be humongous, and we could have the greenest Olympics ever. So we're working on the preliminary plans. We're speaking to the IOC. Watch this space.
The Mayor first floated the idea during his re-election campaign a year ago. He suggested London might bid to host the Games in 2036 or 2040, but there would be huge challenges. The Olympic Stadium is now the home of West Ham and has far fewer spectator seats. The Aquatic Centre has also been downsized since 2012, and the Athletes' Village is now home to a whole new community of Londoners, one of the Olympic legacy promises.
All the facilities are already being repurposed. The main facilities you need to host an Olympic Games are an Olympic Stadium and an Olympic Village, both of which were built specifically for 2012. They were great facilities, but they've now found other uses.
London's last Olympic project cost taxpayers, and London council taxpayers in particular, more than £9 billion. It took 7 years to build the Olympic Park and sporting venues. The Mayor's political opponents question his motives.
We've got a Mayor who's still got to build a third of the homes that he would promise Londoners by next year. And he's failed on that. He's failed on bringing Crossrail through at the appropriate time. And so he wants a bit of a distraction.
But the Mayor believes another Olympics would fit his vision of making London the sporting capital of the world. After practicing his pitching, the Mayor flew from New York to San Francisco for the second leg of his American tour. He'll meet business leaders in Silicon Valley, Hollywood executives in Los Angeles, as well as seeing how that city has legalized cannabis.
Good morning, how's it going?
His first stop in California was a meeting with women entrepreneurs from London, hoping to secure investment from tech firms here. Simon Harris, ITV News, Silicon Valley.
Good evening. The Mayor has revealed how a surge in racist abuse led him to being given police protection. During his tour of the US, promoting the capital, he told students online attacks towards him increased 2,000% after Donald Trump's election. Sadiq Khan was a frequent target of the former president, who once called him a stone-cold loser. But today, a London charity said this was more than just a Trump problem, insisting social media companies need to do more to stop online hate. From California, our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It was one of the highlights of Sadiq Khan's first day in California. An invitation to pitch at a game between the San Francisco Giants and the Colorado Rockies.
Pitching for London, successfully.
He met his opposite number from San Francisco, London Breed. The Mayor was among friends. But there are parts of American culture which have been less kind to him. Sadiq Khan says racist attacks on him by internet trolls spiked by 2,000% after Donald Trump's presidential election campaign. And analysis by City Hall also reveals the Mayor has been racially abused online almost 250,000 times since taking office. He told students at California's Stanford University there was a clear link between trolling and Trump's presidency.
That first year, the amount of racial abuse I received on social media increased by 2,000%. And during those 4 years he was president, that led to me having to receive police protection and a lot of racial abuse.
As the mayor was speaking, Elon Musk, the prospective owner of Twitter, suggested the ban on Trump using the platform would be lifted.
I do think that it was not correct to ban Donald Trump. I think that was a mistake because it alienated a large part of the country.
I think everybody should be entitled to be rehabilitated. And if it's the case that Donald Trump's going to use Twitter in a responsible way, then it's all well and good. If he breaks the rules, there needs to be consequences.
The feud between the former president and Mr. Khan began in 2015, when the mayor criticised Trump for his campaign pledge to ban Muslim immigrants from the US.
Your views on Islam are ignorant, and you're inadvertently playing into the hands of extremists.
I don't care about him. I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me about him. He doesn't know me, never met me, doesn't know what I'm all about.
Donald Trump went on to criticise Khan over his responses to terror attacks and crime in London. He tweeted that Khan was a stone-cold loser just before arriving in the UK for another visit in 2019.
Trump was just a mouthpiece for other racist hatred engulfing America and engulfing the UK at the moment. Banning him off Twitter just displaces his voice. He moves on to other sites. Racism doesn't go away. We need broader structural changes to tackle voices like Trump.
Sadiq Khan points out that when Trump was banned from Twitter, the racist abuse targeting him dropped by 40%. Simon Harris, ITV News, San Francisco.
Sadiq Khan has appointed a former minister to investigate the possible decriminalisation of cannabis. The mayor made the announcement during a visit to a cannabis factory in Los Angeles. Mr. Khan said he had an open mind about the merits of legalising the Class B drugs, an idea that's been met with disbelief by some back here. From California, our political correspondent Simon Harris sent this report.
It isn't in his gift, but Sadiq Khan has just taken a first step towards decriminalising cannabis. On a visit to a licensed cannabis factory in Los Angeles, he announced he's setting up a commission to look at relaxing the rules.
Well, it's quite clear this is a heavily regulated environment. I've heard from the experts, but it's really interesting to see it in practice.
Is it the future?
Well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, this is what the world wants to see. Clean, tested, legal, licensed cannabis,
The mayor was shown around the factory by its founder. It's a cannabis production line on an industrial scale. This is known as the mom room. These are the mother plants grown from seedlings, and from these plants cuttings are taken to grow even more. The industry's disciples are keen to spread the word with their own well-rehearsed gospel.
It sounds sometimes scary because it's a drug or people get afraid of it. It's really just plants that have wonderful medicinal values the same way as eating broccoli can.
In 2018, Californians were legally allowed to buy cannabis and cannabis products over the counter. There are now more than 200 licensed businesses in Los Angeles. At Gorilla, the shelves are stacked with everything from plant, that's cannabis to smoke, to cannabis cookies, cannabis sweets, and a particularly powerful cannabis syrup. What effect does the syrup have?
I probably think it will calm you down so much that you are just so relaxed and chilled out. It might just knock you out as well and have probably the best sleep of your life.
The cannabis industry in Los Angeles generates $165 million a year in taxes. For the city authorities, it's a source of income. But the licensed businesses say the taxes make it hard for them to compete with the illegal trade.
If somebody comes and spends $100 in a legal licensed medical marijuana store, the tax is about 38%. Now you're paying $138, as opposed if you go to an illegal dispensary or you go to the street, you spend $100, it's $100.
Former Labour Justice Secretary Lord Falconer will chair Sadiq Khan's new London Drugs Commission.
We can close our minds and stick our heads in the sand, or we can look at the evidence. So what I've announced today is the chair of this commission. We've got one of the world's leading universities, UCL, helping us as well. I've got an open mind. I hope the government will as well.
It can't have any impact on Londoners until the government decide if they wish to decriminalise. And since the government at the moment has no intention of doing that, and since the Labour Party itself has announced that it has no intention of doing that, I don't know why Sadiq Khan is going down this line at the moment.
So here you start to see the wide array. We have a lot of...
If his commission recommends legalising cannabis, the mayor won't just have to persuade the government. Labour, his own party, also opposes decriminalising the drug.
Simon, what's the likelihood of any of this going ahead?
Well, the policy certainly hasn't made Sadiq Khan any friends in government. Priti Patel tweeted that he has no powers to legalise drugs. His time would be better spent focused on knife and drug crime, and drugs tear families apart and destroy lives. Labour equally quick to distance itself from the policy. I had a text in the middle of the night from a Labour Party spokesperson to say Labour has no plans to change the law. So what does Sadiq Khan hope to achieve? Well, it's certainly an eye-catching policy. It's grabbed the headlines, and he does believe that because cannabis use is so widespread in London, there does need to be a debate. But at the moment, it doesn't look as if whatever his commission comes up with, that the findings will sway either the Labour or Tory party. By the way, if you're wondering where I am at the moment, I'm standing in the middle of the backlot at Universal City Studios in Hollywood, which the Mayor of London is due to visit shortly as part of his 5-day tour of American cities, where he's hoping to drum up trade and bang the drum for tourism in London.
Simon, in Hollywood, thank you. Sadiq Khan has brokered a deal with film studio Universal in America to train up young Londoners to work in behind-the-scenes movie jobs. The mayor finished his tour of the States today in Hollywood. He's been on a charm offensive, encouraging American tourists back to the capital after the pandemic. Simon Harris has been following him along on the trip and sent this report from Los Angeles.
Hollywood beckoned on the final day of Sadiq Khan's American road trip. The mayor was taken on the studio tour at Universal City.
There's a new sheriff in town.
This might be the home of the movies, but filmmaking is also a significant part of London's economy. The mayor was here to announce a deal between City Hall and Universal to give more young Londoners training in behind-the-scenes jobs.
This is often a bit of a mystifying industry. It certainly feels like an industry that's filled with sort of hierarchy and very difficult to access. And so a program like this is designed to create opportunity, to create pathways, to create access.
Even in a pandemic, it's estimated film and TV producers spent more than £5 billion in the UK last year, and 3/4 of it was in London, where new studios are being built.
In terms of the volume of studio space, we are becoming one of the biggest centres for studio infrastructure on planet Earth. And frankly, outside of North America, we're getting to be the biggest game in town.
The mayor has spent 5 days in America. In New York, he launched a £10 million promotional campaign to encourage tourists to return to London. In San Francisco, he spoke to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, the birthplace of the tech industry. He talked to students at Stanford University about the link between internet trolls, racist abuse and Donald Trump. And at a cannabis factory in Los Angeles, he announced he was setting up a commission to look at the pros and cons of legalising the Class B drug. The mayor's trip was criticised by one London Assembly Conservative as a self-promoting tour at taxpayers' expense. Both the government and Labour poured cold water on his cannabis idea.
Londoners in the ballot box last May voted for me in record numbers, and my manifesto was quite clear. We set up a London Drugs Commission to do some independent work looking into whether cannabis should be decriminalised. I don't apologise for standing by the promise I made in the election.
For the mayor, this trip yielded a series of photo opportunities, some staged, some by chance, which, if nothing else, helped a municipal politician to up his international profile. Simon Harris, ITV News, Hollywood.